Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's meeting. We're here to discuss both Grace Harbor and Willapa Bay fisheries proposals for this year. I'm going to wait a couple of minutes here again just to let everybody get connected, and then we'll get started. Okay, I think we've leveled off here with our participants. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us. My name's Marlene Wagner, and I'm the South Coast Policy Lead for the department, covering both Grace Harbor and Willapa Bay. And I'll just start by going through our Zoom meeting logistics and ground rules. So you can turn your camera on and mute or unmute yourself through the control panel at the bottom of your screen. We'll keep folks muted during the beginning of our program and then unmute folks when we open it up for discussions and feedback. Callers can unmute themselves by pressing *6 on their phones. We're going to ask that you raise your hand to ask a question, and you can access this through the control panel at the bottom of the screen. You can also raise your hand by hovering over your face or name on the list of participants, and callers can raise their hands by dialing *9. Please be respectful of others. Mute your phone or line when you're not speaking. Be tough on the issues and questions, but not on people or organizations. Do not engage in personal attacks, insults, or threats. And listen, speak, and act professionally, and allow for a balance of speaking time. So no offensive, disrespectful, or derogatory language, including profanity. And please do limit the length and number of times that you speak on each topic. This meeting is being recorded. If you have any technical issues during the call, you can use the chat button and we're going to help you through those, but we're going to take your questions and comments live. And next slide, please. So again, we're here for our last 2022 North of Falcon public meeting for Grace Harbor and Willapa Bay. And this evening, we're going to go over just a couple kind of hot topics that we've been talking about through our fishery planning season. And then I'm going to hand the microphone over to our Grace Harbor fish biologist, Mike Sharp, to review the Grace Harbor fisheries proposal. And we'll take questions specific to Grace Harbor at that time. And then we'll have Jody Pope, our Willapa Bay biologist, discuss final fisheries proposals for Willapa Bay, and afterwards take questions and comments for Willapa. Next slide, please. So here's our 2022 kind of hot topics of interest. At our last two meetings, we discussed our high forecasted abundance and the 5% impact rate put forth in the Grace Harbor policy for not meeting escapement goals for Chehalis Coho in 3 of the last 5 years. So we did go before the Fish Committee on April 14th after our last meeting to explain this issue, on April 7th And on April 8th, the full Fish and Wildlife Commission voted to allow us to plan to exceed this 5% impact rate while still exceeding the conservation goals for this stock. Down in Willapa Bay, we've been discussing the potential to close the control zone in an effort to conserve Lower Columbia River natural tules. And contrary to our expectations, we have enacted closure of the control zone. This was determined last week at the final PFMC meeting, and it was really a result of how fisheries were modeled and interpreted in south of Falcon. And this drove up the exploitation rate on tules. And so there was really a lot of movement everywhere to reduce impacts, including the ocean quota being decreased. And Willapa Bay contributed to this effort by both this closure of the control zone and by removing a day of commercial fishing in August. So all sectors here have really been giving a little push and pull to protect these fish. Next slide, please. And so now, welcome to Mike Sharp, our Grace Harbor fishery biologist. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I must first apologize for the appalling purple that my camera seems to display every piece of clothing that I wear. This is not purple. I'm not supporting the Huskies at this current moment. However, that's what the camera shows. So I apologize. So during the first two meetings, we discussed different options and alternatives to the Grace Harbor fishing package this season. And we did some refinements and took into consideration all of the comments and suggestions that we heard, and put together this package, which has been presented. And I'm just going to go over it real quick as a review. And this is the one we are proposing to move forward in the APA process. So in the bay, in area 2.2 for the sport, in the North Bay, we have a season that opens August 1st and runs through September 15th. This is a one fish limit with the requirement to release wild coho. Then in the East Bay, the season is open September 16th through October 31st with a two fish bag, release Chinook. And then for the month of November, it's a one fish bag with the requirement of releasing Chinook. So in the hump tulips, we have a September time period where we have two fish that can be retained, but with the requirements of releasing all wild coho. For the month of October, it's a two fish limit, of which only one may be a Chinook, but then requiring the release of all wild Chinook and wild coho. And then November through December, it's a one fish bag with the requirement of releasing Chinook and wild coho. So in the lower river, this is from the 101 bridge up to South Elma. The two pole endorsement is allowed. And in August through September 15th, we have the jack fishery that is in place. So all adult salmon need to be released. So from Fuller Bridge, now I just want to make sure the distinction here. So up to South Elma, the jack fishery is open. But from the 101 bridge up to South Elma, beginning September 16th through October 31st, there is a two adult bag, of which releasing adult Chinook. So you can still keep your 6 jacks, but as soon as you get your 2 adult limit, you're done for the day. So I want to make the distinction there that up to Fuller Bridge, it's open September 16th through October 31st. Again, 2 fish bag, release adult Chinook. In November, it drops down to a 1 fish bag and requires the release of all Chinook. And in December, it's a 1 fish bag, releasing all Chinook and wild coho. And this season is, nope, I guess not. Nope. For the Chehalis main stem upstream of Fuller Bridge, and for the tributaries, Satsup, Hoquiam, all of those. The season opens October 1st through October 31st with a 2 fish bag, release adult Chinook. Then in November, 1 fish bag, release all Chinook. And in December, release one fish bag, release all Chinook and wild Coho. For the Nuakum and the Skookumchuck, same season structure, but it doesn't open until October 16th. And we've had that discussion in the past that this is to protect the spawning spring Chinook that are occurring up there. The commercial, non-treated commercial package that we've put together and are proposing is during the week of September 25th, a 7-hour opener that starts at noon and ends basically at dark at 7. So 1 day during the week of October 9th. And these are all Sunday through. So basically it's the week of the 25th that Quinaults are fishing a couple of days, and then we start, I believe it's a Wednesday at noon, and then goes through the daylight hours. Same scenario with the week of the October 9th, where it's a 1 7-hour day fishery. And then during the week of October 16th, there's 2 12-hour days in there. During all of those first 3 weeks, we close the South Channel to provide extra protection for the Chinook that are in there. During the week of October 23rd, there's a 3 12-hour day fishery going on. And then the following week after that, it's a 2 12-hour day. Then in the 2C side, we have during the week of October 16th, a 36-hour fishery. So basically we're going in right after the Quinaults, starting at, I got to rethink about it. It's a 36-hour fishery. And then the following week, we have 1 12-hour fishery. And I think we are going to open it up for Grays Harbor discussion at this point. And then after we've wrapped that up, we'll move on to Willapa Bay. So I think at this point, we will open it up for comments, questions, concerns within the Grays Harbor fishery proposal package. Let's move on.
Sorry, Mike. And our next, I had a puppy that started squealing. Our first hand is Eric. Eric, you can unmute yourself.
Hey, good evening. My question's a quick one. Is in regard to the commercial season when it's backed up against the Quinaults fishery. Is there going to be sufficient no net days in a given week, like in October and such? In the past, you guys have tried to do 4 on, 3 off. Is that still going to apply?
So I will take a little bit of time to answer this question. So in week 40, they're fishing, and when I say they're fishing 3 24-hour days, they almost always start at noon Sunday, then pull out noon. If it's a 3-day fishery, they'll pull out noon Wednesday. So on week 40, they pull out noon Wednesday. We go in noon Wednesday and pull out at 7 p.m. No nets in the water Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Week 41, we don't have any fishery proposed. Week 42, same scenario as week 41. They're fishing 3 days. As soon as they pull out noon, we start up noon and go through 7 p.m. Week 43, they're proposing 2 12-hour days. No, 2 24-hour days. So they will pull out Tuesday at noon. So during this week, we had negotiations with the Quinaults. There's a lot of coho available. We want to give all of our sectors a meaningful opportunity at coho, and asked if we could go in early that week. We were not successful in arguing that point, and it didn't become meaningful in our eyes to have the non-treaty commercial fishery always start noon the day quinaults finish fishing. And in reality, that only really gives the non-treaty commercial guys about 7 hours of fishing because we don't allow Chinook harvest opportunities. Fishing at night is not beneficial. So they don't want to fish at night because they catch too many Chinook. So we looked at the schedule. Quinaults are not fishing in week 44. And so we decided that if we open a fishery Wednesday at 7 a.m., close at 7 p.m., and then fish Thursday 7 a.m. and close 7 p.m., that leaves Friday, Saturday, and the following Sunday, the next Sunday, free of nets. So technically, in a given calendar week, there isn't 3 consecutive days, but we do have 3 consecutive days that week and the following week where that we have these open windows. Sorry, the washing machine just started going nuts. So anyway, if we look at, and Kim sent out some handouts earlier today, yesterday or today, and it shows where everybody is fishing. And where we have fisheries, we have 33 consecutive days of net-free areas. And so in following the intent of the policy and reading the words of the policy, we feel that we have provided what the intent of the policy was designed to do, and that's provide 3 consecutive days without nets for each of the weeks where fishing is occurring.
All right, good explanation, thanks. And I wanted to comment, I like the rec season, it looks good.
Thank you.
And it looks like our next hand is from Neil. Neil, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, first off, I just wanted to make sure I'm correct in understanding this. For Coho specifically, is the Grace Harbor, the whole system ran as an aggregate, basically?
There's 2 ways to look at it. The Quinaults view Grace Harbor as hump tulips and Chehalis with an aggregate of 35,400, I believe.
Okay,
That is their management objective. WDFW looks at it as basically 2 separate stocks, if you will, hump tulips and the Chehalis.
okay. So then like for the Chehalis in specific, I understand we're supposed to have, a very, very large return of Coho this year, but to me, it seems like those upper tributaries are kind of the ones that are carrying the load when it comes to escapement. So I was just wondering what the justification was for having a 2-fish non-selective harvest on rivers like the Wainuchi, the Hoquiam, rivers like that where you don't have hatchery supplementation to kind of buffer that impact on the wild fish.
Well, again, we don't manage to specific streams. And during those years when we had plenty of escapement, pre-2015, those systems achieved what the arbitrary goal are for those systems. We've had a downward trend for the past 5 years where coast-wide and statewide Coho populations haven't been doing well. That turned around this past year. We don't have our escapement estimates completed at this time, but all the indicators that we have and the preliminary work that we've done point to about a 60,000 fish escapement. And those include the systems that people seem to be concerned with, the Hoquiam, the Wishkah, the Wainuchi. And because we manage to a Chehalis stock, and because we have heard in the past that when we have complicated seasons, it confuses people. And so we felt that trying to minimize seasons specific to each basin. We one, provide consistency and understanding in our fishing regulations. Plus, we're still managing to achieve the escapement goal of 28,506. And this package, along with the Quinault inputs, suggest that we would probably have upwards of 58,000 natural origin plus about 27,000 hatchery origin fish that are going to make it to the spawning gravel.
Okay, cool. Appreciate it.
And our next hand is from Melanie. Melanie, go ahead.
Okay, I'll start and then Bob will go. I just want to say thank you very much. I like the two fish. Happy to take that. You guys did a good job. I really appreciate it. Bob's up.
Hi, so that was a set date on the Quinault opening when they were gonna start fishing. That was, I believe you said September 25th.
They have not produced their actual regulation as to which the actual date that they will start their fishery. If I had to guess, they would open the 25th of September at noon, would be their
Okay.
first day of fishing.
Now, if they opened before that, does that mean that a higher Chinook encounter would shut them down earlier? Do they play by the same numbers that we do on that, or is there, since they go by an aggregate, is their Chinook number higher because of the hump tulips?
They do go by the aggregate. So these are all rate-based estimate or predictions of harvest. So rate-based as opposed to a quota is basically your catch will be adjusted appropriately by the actual run size. So if they're predicted to catch 100 fish in the first week and they catch 300 fish, one could surmise that the run is either coming in early or larger. Likewise, if they're predicted to catch 100 fish and they only catch 50, one could guess that the run is either late or it's smaller than expected. So with rate-based,
Well, doesn't that mean they could take it either way? Well, the run's just late, so let's continue fishing.
so if you do rate-based, these days are set. They're going to fish 3 days, 3 24-hour days during the week of September 25th. The only way that they will adjust that is that if they get agreement with us that they were blown out of the water because of high flows and no nets went into the river, then they can do makeup days. But this is set. This part is what we agreed to with them on their season. And
So
then you're
September
proposing ours in relationship to theirs.
So September 25th is a set date for their opener. They wouldn't be opening earlier than that.
Unless there is mutual agreement. But no, their season, this is what they told us they were going to do.
Great, okay, that sounds good. It gives us at least 10 days on the water with no nets by anybody. So that's a good thing. That's higher than we've had in the past couple of years, so I'm a happy camper with that. And I appreciate all your work on this season. And one last question, none of you have heard of any progress being made on funding abilities for the launch in Montesano, have you?
I have not heard anything new. I've just been reassured that it will be open before the season starts.
Great, okay. Thanks again.
Thanks again.
Thank you both. And next up is Travis. Travis, go ahead.
Hey, Mike, how's it going today?
Good.
Just a question for me. I love this season. This is kind of what we talked about in previous meeting. Everything looks great to me. What is the next step after this? Because I don't know. Who does this go to before it's put into play, into the regulations?
So if this is what we move forward with and we don't hear anything to make changes, we say, and somebody's going to correct me if I'm wrong, but it goes through a public review process. And if it makes it through that, and it's like a 30-day process, I don't know. Barb knows this a lot better than me, and I don't know if Barb wants to jump on and let me know what the dates are, but it goes through a public review process, and then it goes through an actual public hearing process. So there's a lot of other opportunities for people to comment on this as it moves forward. And if there's anything that comes to light that we need to make significant changes, we kind of go back through the process of public reviews. We don't necessarily go through these public meetings, but public hearings and public review periods.
So maybe I can jump in here. Good evening, everybody. Mark Baltzell, statewide salmon and steelhead manager. So the way this works is from here in early May, we will file a CR 102 under the rulemaking process. And that essentially outlines our proposed season for this year. Along with that, we produce what's called a concise explanatory statement that explains our reasons for why we put this season in place, why we didn't take other suggestions for different seasons into consideration, and provide that explanation. From there, that'll go back to, as Mike stated, it'll be open for a public comment period. The whole idea from here, though, is any changes that we make to the proposed season either have to be impact neutral on those stocks of concern, or less. They can be less than the predicted impact that we have in this preseason process. So we can't alter the season where we would have more impacts going forward, but we could consider different proposed seasons that would lessen our impact on any of these stocks. So again, that rulemaking process will go through, and hopefully the director signs off by late June. And then essentially there's a 30-day period for when those will go into effect after the director signs. So hope that clears it up. Thank you.
Yeah, that was basically what I was wondering. I was just curious on that, of when we would know for sure, but it sounds like, by July, we should probably know something. So if this is what we're going to have for sure. So thank you guys for the work you did on this. To me, as far as this is probably about the best we could do, and both best possible outcome, in my opinion, especially for the main stem and the Chehalis. I mean, this is exactly what I was looking for. So thank you.
Our next hand is from David. David, go ahead.
Yeah, I got a couple questions. I got to do a click here to get to something. Ew. Okay, in the case of this, Mike, I talked to Mike, and he was very frank and advised me certain things and this thing, and I appreciate his honesty and forthright. I have a simple question. Are the people I seen on the side of the screen there, are you the only bodies present from the agency, or is there someone hiding out in the closet?
There's a number of staff on the line. Dave, is there someone in particular you wanted to talk to?
Well, I will toward the end, but I don't want to take up everybody's time as you're trying to get through this thing for everybody. Some people are familiar with things, others not. But at the end of this thing, I would like a couple minutes to discuss a couple things, because I want them on the record as this is recorded. Okay. So in the interim for that is, in the case of Chinook escapement, when I look at the proposed season, we're 800 in the red or more. And the policy clearly states you're supposed to set seasons to escapement. So right there, I'm not exactly sure what you guys are doing On that one, I'm sure that's an argument with the Quinault because they want to take 3 in the model 1,000. But that is clearly outside the boundaries of the policy for you guys to agree to that. The second one is in the standing down of 4.3, the word calendar was put in that section of the policy for one reason. So you couldn't do exactly what you're doing. Okay, it was put there so calendar week, so you couldn't stick them in one week and another week and back them up end to end. And that came for retired agency staff, extraordinarily familiar with the process that said if that word wasn't in there, you would do exactly this. You guys went to the commission on the 5% because the extraordinary thing, the adaptive management, 100% correct. I can argue the season, but I can't argue the process. But the problem with it is nobody got any information on what you were going to present until about 4.5 hours before the commission meeting. You had no way to put together a coherent response if you differed with yours. And so basically we stood down the 5%. That's understandable, adaptive management. But you also didn't mention to anybody that you're standing down 4.3. I understand Mike's position. It was technical my butt. Words have meaning. And it was very clear when I was at every meeting, every conversation outside private ones with the commission. And even after it was done, when we went at it, Steve Theisfeld made it very clear. The agency's positions was very simple. They would abide by it. Okay. He says, it's very clear. There's no reasons for anybody not to understand it. Okay. And you went to the commission. I know you got the 5%. You never told anybody that, especially people have been involved in this, that you intended to go in after 4.3. You did that without anybody in the public aware. And if you want to understand why I will take umbrage with this, I could read the whole paragraph that the commission put in, but they clearly directed you guys to be more transparent, involve more public discussion, and clearly vet anything. And that is not what you did. You did 100% the other. You went into the closet and didn't come out. Okay, now people said, oh, I like 2 fish, 1, 3 fish. It don't matter if somebody says, I want 10 fish. People will put in with their dream list. This is reality, okay? The reality is you started trampling all over the policy the first time things went a little south on you. So on the 4.3 thing, that you did not even advise anybody you were going to do that. You just did it, okay? And so for the 4.3 in that, and I have no idea by the policy or even by your own internal guidelines, you're not supposed to be setting seasons where you don't make escapement. Okay. So I'm not, now I understand you can't control the Quinaults. And I also remember the 4.3, it also is when possible. Well, that question was posed to Steve very clearly with a large crowd of people, and I guarantee one of them that was in that crowd is on this meeting tonight. And he stated clearly that that meant if the nation went in for 4 days, that was it. You're done. Okay. When possible meant that you had to work around the nation because a policy can't control the nation. Okay. Now you guys didn't tell anybody you're doing this, and that is not correct, gentlemen and ladies. That is just manipulation. Okay. Now everybody say, I love your seasons and everything. That's people who don't understand this process completely and understand what they're looking at on paper. Okay. And so right now, as far as we are, that's where I'm at. I still prefer a different method to protect the lower tribs. I can pull up the spreadsheet right now and read off the numbers, but I don't want to take everybody's time. But like the Wynoochee, the only time it's made escapement is when the run ends up being not the run size, the escapement goes up is somewhere between 250 and 300% of the escapement goal. That's the only time the Wynoochee makes escapement. The Hoquiam had 440 fish a year or two ago because my data don't go all the way up. And now you're going to have 2 fish limit on it. And I understand wreck fishers wanting simplicity and this and that. And I understand that. The other side of the coin is there is no more screaming, bitching, howling group of individuals that I've ever met than recreational fishers. They're focused on one thing 9 times out of 10, and that's killing a damn fish. Okay. Now you got to realize, I understand that. I used to do that too. But the point is, the fish got to come first. Okay. Now the aggregate thing, that's another argument, and it's the whole thing. But I mean, you guys were supposed, as you relate it to your processes here, you were going to go to try to get the 5%, so allow, because it's an extraordinary event with the run size. Totally agree. What you didn't do was let anybody know what you're going to present to the commission. And 2, you bloody well never mentioned the fact that you were going to go after 4-3 and set a season for Chinook, 800 to 1,000 below escapement. Now, that is not appropriate under any circumstances. And I will talk if I see other issues, but I like a little time at the end. Mr. Losi, are you on this? I see you there. As we get to the end of this, my conversation wants to be with you, okay? And I want it on the record. So, and I'll do my best not to use the wrong verbiage this time so everybody gets upset. So I will shut up for a minute so you can get going, because a lot of people want to see listen to this, and not me.
Appreciate your comments, Dave.
And our next hand is from Garrett. Go ahead, Garrett.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank Mike and the rest of the guys in the department for crafting a season that is going to allow us to fish on what appears to be a pretty healthy run of coho while still making sure we exceed the escapables. I want to thank the commission for allowing us to do this. I do have one short, I guess what I'd like to talk about is with the last couple of years with our December 1st basin-wide shutdown for protection of steelhead. I mean, I've been fishing the upper basin, so I want to say like Polar Bridge, upriver. The month of December, we don't have hardly any steelhead until, if the water conditions are right, we might get our first push the last week of December. But most years it is until the first week of January. And I know we don't really know our steelhead numbers yet, but if we are faced with a basin-wide closure again, I would just love to see that December 1st closure pushed out to the 15th of December. That would give us those first 2 weeks in the upper basin to target that late run hatchery coho returning to the scoop and chuck, and it would still have very minimal, if any, bycatch on steelhead, since they just simply aren't up there yet. That's all I've got for now. Thank you very much.
Appreciate the comment, Garrett.
Our next hand is from Patrick. Patrick, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Try to make this short. I got my kids here right next to me. I want to agree with Dave. This whole thing, we went into it trying to talk about, moderation and this and that, and this, especially with this hump tulips king salmon thing, that just totally feels like we got pushed over by the tribe because they wanted a bigger season. I mean, I'd like to know who in the department actually participates in that fishery in September, because I know I have, and opening it up to a 2-fish king salmon limit, 2 wild king salmon, you're setting yourself up for a bad scenario, in my opinion. I just really don't feel good about it, and hopefully I'm wrong, but knowing firsthand, a little better than probably most on this call, it's not good. I was kind of hoping we would, get away from these gold rush fisheries, these super, super high bag limits, and then just shut it down. It's just these huge roller coasters every other year, it seems like. I'm pretty disappointed though, like Dave said, there wasn't much transparency when you guys took this to the commission. I had no idea. I knew we were trying to get the 5% taken away, but everything else I was in the dark about. So I hope we rethink this hunt tulips river wild king salmon egg limit before we finalize this, and that's all I got. Thank you.
Do you have a proposal in which you would like to submit?
Yeah, I sent an email. I'm partial to just one and done, particularly, or 1 and 1. So that's my opinion. One wild, one hatchery, just one fish, and get off the river.
Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. And our next hand is from Francis. Go ahead. Francis, you can unmute.
Unmuted.
And there you are. We can hear you.
I'll join the backslapping crowd. Well done, crew. I think it was very well crafted overall on the recreational seasons. I respect the opinions that Mr. Gaffney put forward on the hump tulips for two Chinook. It fits on the model. It was said by probably, well, it was unanimous amongst all the rec representatives on the Grays Harbor Committee back in 2006 that nobody needs two kings in the Chehalis or in the Grays Harbor Basin ever. And so to that extent, I think most people would be happy with one Chinook. Certainly one wild Chinook would be plenty. If you got a hatchery fish as a bonus, keep that 2 fish bag, but only one wild. But the season does fit within the model. You still meet your conservation objective, but the flip side is if the state doesn't take them, then the other side probably will. So I don't want to be too critical about it, but I can see the perspective of the other side, thinking that maybe perhaps that's a little too generous. Carrying over the Chinook conservation issue to the basin as a whole. Yes, the Quinaults fish to an aggregate. This is the first year that I'm aware of that they want to go after the escapement goal. We've always thought of the escapement as a wild escapement, meaning natural origin fish that actually make it to the gravel. And that's kind of the metric we've held ourselves to. And pretty much up until this year, that's the metric I thought the Quinaults were holding themselves to. But apparently this year, they're willing to say that any Chinook making it to gravel, whether it's a wild or hatchery origin, counts as part of the escapement goal. That's their interpretation. I don't know what position we have to challenge that. I will say that I respect the state's discipline in managing our side of managing our fisheries to stay within our share, well within our share of Chinook exploitation in the Chehalis Basin. I mean, if anyone's going to be the fall guy for why we didn't make wild escapement in 2022, it will fall directly on the shoulders of the Quinault, because the state at least had the discipline to look out for wild escapement in terms of how these seasons were put together. So I do want to respect what Mr. Hamilton had to say. If nothing else, we could have put up a little more resistance at PFMC / North of Falcon negotiations to say, no, this is BS. But it is what it is, and I don't think you can control them. The best you can do is control us. I'm pretty proud of the seasons that you've put forward. I think they're a step in the right direction for meeting policy objectives to the best of our ability while still being flexible enough to know we're going to more than exceed our escapement expectations for Coho. The Chinook side, that falls squarely on the other side, okay? And I think we're okay on chum. And with that, I will stop. Thank you. Good job.
Thank you. And our next hand is from a caller ending in 793. You can go ahead.
You got me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
All right. This is Andy. So in Mike's defense on the 4-3, the commission waived the 4-3, Dave. And I don't think he'd be offended if I said your name. But if you listen to the Saturday meeting, the commission waived the 4-3 after they changed the 5% too. And if one day a fishing is gonna, with all those extra fish, is gonna ruin the wreck fishery, then I guess that's the way it has to be. And everybody must remember the policy is a guideline, and the state used their best judgment to maximize our season with what few days it is. So don't jump on Mike. That's all.
Thank you. And it looks like that's our last hand for right now.
Hey, thanks, Leah. If we could go to the next slide, please. I'll go ahead and toss the microphone to Jody Pope. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to walk through, similar to how Mike's is set up, Willapa Bay fishery proposal. For this first slide, will be recreational. And then the next slide, we'll take a look at the commercial proposal. So similar to Mike's, we have the area on the left, section, season, and limits. And I'm not going to walk through all of these. These are very familiar to most of you, and how they are kind of laid out in the pamphlet. So they're set up pretty nice. Most all areas, I should start with the marine area. So as mentioned earlier in this presentation, the control zone starting August 1st in Willapa Bay will be closed. There is a daily limit of 2, and we're releasing unmarked Chinook. And in all systems except for the Palix, the Middle and South Nema, everywhere else is a daily limit of 2 with 1 unmarked Chinook retention. And in those other systems, it's a daily limit of 2 where we'll release unmarked Chinook and wild Coho. So next slide, please. And this is the Willapa Bay Fisheries proposal for commercial. So the highlighted areas on my screen, it looks blue with bolded numbers are the number of days that are proposed for each of the statistical weeks on the left-hand side of your screen. These are 12-hour openings. And from week 35 through 38, those are tangle net fisheries. From weeks 39 to 42, they're small mesh. Weeks 43 and 44 is closed, and weeks 45 through 47 are gillnet small mesh. And that's what we have in Willapa Bay. And at this time, we can open it up for questions specific for Willapa Bay.
Just to remind everybody, if you're having trouble finding your raise hand function, the smiley face with the plus sign at the bottom of your screen labeled with reactions. And I'm not seeing any hands. Oh, and it looks like we have a hand from Lance Gray. Lance, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess nobody's going to talk. We don't want to waste a whole hour here. I just want to say thank you for the hard work on the season. I highly doubt that we'll see this many days, but I'm glad that we scheduled it. The only other thing, most of these things, when you look at the days that we're fishing in the areas, we don't come up on the 20%. And I'm hoping that as we do the fishery, that we basically have put a buffer in it. A lot of these are 16, 17% on the harvest rates. So I'm hoping we won't be super nervous if we get to catch that number, that we still have a 2 or 3 or 4% buffer on many of these areas that we're fishing in. Yeah, other than that, I'm hoping that we can work together to find some way to evaluate our chum run in season, and just wanted to put that on there, and hopefully when we get time, we'll be able to sit down and work that out, something that we can try. But thank you.
Thanks, Lance.
And that was our last hand. So just to remind folks, *9 if you're on the phone. And Marlene, it looks like there's no more questions.
Thanks, Leah. I'm a little surprised. We don't have more people commenting, but we're really glad that we were able to share these proposals with you, and we had a really nice amount of participants this evening. Oh, there, I do see a hand.
Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was having a hard time figuring my phone out. Yeah, I'll have to back that up with Lance. I'd like to see these seasons, modeled more 20%, and then realize we do have a little area to work with. So hopefully we can get the days that we've proposed. So I guess we get a good job. We got a lot of days scheduled. Hopefully we'll see them. So we'll get to use them. But all right, that's it.
Thanks, Greg.
And it looks like Marlisa has her hand up. Marlisa, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. I have to pipe up and say that, after reviewing the spreadsheets and looking at the proposal, that I have to express my disappointment with the department from standing down the important parameters in the Willapa policy that were designed to achieve wild escapement. That the lack of an advocacy board to talk about this prior to this, being given the information given to us hours before we have a chance to comment on it. And it's pretty clear to me that the only comments that are being really considered are those that come from the commercial fleet. And it's frankly depressing. So I have to state that preserving and protecting recreational priority on Chinook, clearly stated in the policy that we worked so hard for, is not being met by standing down nets prior to Labor Day in the north and prior to September 15th in the south. Doesn't meet our parameters set in the policy. And I think that and correct me if I'm wrong, the control zone, we're re-implementing the control zone out in front of Tokeland, so there's no fishing out there this year. Is that what I understood early? Can someone answer that for me?
That's correct. The control zone will be closed this year.
So there was a lot of discontent with that. The past, it was done because it saved like 6 fish by closing it. So again, I think that closure is a real slap in the face to the marine rec fishers who are already heavily handicapped with incredibly poor fishing opportunities out there. And my feeling as a recreational advocate is the few toolies that the selective rec fishers are going to have an opportunity at, I don't think it matters. And that if we're truly working on tule escapement, that those burdens should fall squarely only on the ocean fisheries. I've just got to speak up and say that, because I don't feel as though my comments were addressed or implemented in any way, looking at the proposal that's being met here for the Willapa. It'll all be fine. The NEMA is still going to see fish here, but the Willapa, those people are not. And looking at the CRC data that just got sent to me, the opportunities elsewhere are grim. They are grim. And I'd like to see the department do more by keeping the nets out of the bay so that those marine rec fishers can have a chance to catch a fish, a meaningful opportunity, not 1 fish every 8 trips. I don't get it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marlisa. Looks like our next hand is from a caller ending in 445. You can unmute.
This is Steve Gackey from NESAL. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. There are a couple of regulation proposals that I made. Nothing's come out in the emails. Nothing's on any of the information you're sharing here. I'm just wondering what is happening there. Are you going to be modifying the regulation above the Highway 4 bridge so we're not having guys going in there fishing trout and hooking salmon? And what about the twitching issue?
Yeah, I guess I'll just say, this is James here. Steve, thanks for your comments. I think a number of us here on the call have either spoken with you or received emails. I think the majority of those have been responded to. The main thing I want to mention here is, I think one of the proposals that you've been most interested in is one associated with the Jig Rule. And so you've had some good ideas to try to limit snagging and poor behavior in fisheries here in Willapa Bay. So I just want to let you know, we've had extensive discussion around those, not just this year, but last year as well. And we know that we've got an enforcement issue, not just in Willapa Bay, but in other parts of the state too. And we explored this year a variety of proposals to try to address that. But we're not confident that we know that, kind of that sweet spot, that regulation that's going to limit bad behavior. We've got knuckleheads in some of our fisheries, and we're just not convinced a gear regulation during the north of Falcon process is the thing that's gonna, limit that type of behavior. That said, we don't want to support it either. So I guess what I'm asking is that you stay engaged in this conversation. We're talking with folks in Grace Harbor, in North Puget Sound, South Puget Sound, Hood Canal, and trying to explore this issue more. So I just want to let you know, you stemmed a pretty meaty conversation on our end. And, I guess I'll say I'm sorry if you're feeling like you're not part of that conversation, but we're thinking hard about it. So let's keep talking. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, so that's your response to the twitching issue. What about modifying that regulation above the Highway 4 bridge?
Yeah, I'll just pause here and let staff jump in if there's something specific there about regulation.
So Steve, this is Jody here. Currently, the regulation right now is that section, I think you're referring to the Highway 4 to the hatchery attraction channel. It is closed until October 16th. Is that what you're referring to?
For salmon, it's closed for salmon.
Correct.
It's open for trout. And guys are going in there and fishing for trout, but and they're saying they're catching and releasing, but I know enforcement last year had to respond numerous times for guys in there hooking salmon, and that's what they're going there for. It's a very simple fix. Just make it a rod and reel requirement. That's all you got to do.
Thanks for your comments, Steve. We'll take that into consideration.
Okay, well, I got to go back to James's comment about the twitching jig, because you guys aren't out in the field like I am watching the river being frothed with these 1 ounce twitching jigs, which is impacting my ability to catch a fish. So I'm very connected here in Nacelle. My wife is a native. Her great-grandfather homesteaded the valley. We have lots of relations with lots of land, which provides access, especially on the lower river, which is open. So when I get out of this meeting, I'm going to be making some phone calls. If you guys don't want to regulate it, we're going to regulate it. And if I can get permission from those landowners, there will not be any twitching down there. We will take care of it, because we're simply tired of it. This is ridiculous. You can study it all you want, but this needs to be fixed. It's impacting the quality of the fishery, and it's impacting the fish being able to get up to the hatchery. I don't know what the hooking mortality in there is, but we see a lot of dead fish, and a lot of them are wild fish floating up. So this has absolutely got to be changed. So one other thing, I've mentioned this in an email to James about the Lake Coho and the impact the steelhead rule has had on our Lake Coho. Our 2 best weeks are the first week of November and the second week of November. With that rule going in the 1st of December, we can't use bait, which is the very most successful method of catching those coho. And I sent him data. I went back to 2013 and showed him all the escapement reports for the nacelle, not Willapa, but for the nacelle. And we simply don't have steelhead in the hatchery until after the 15th of December. And the wild fish come in later. So here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to go ahead and maintain the boat restriction if you're going to impose this again, which I suspect you will, but do not impose the selective gear rule until the 15th of December on the nacelle. That would allow us to, maximize our fishery on those coho, and then you can go ahead and protect all the steelhead you want. Thank you.
Hey, Steve, I'm going to jump in here. I appreciate all those comments. I'm going to focus this meeting here on salmon, not steelhead, but you're bringing up a important point that the two overlap. Fishery changes focused around steelhead affect these salmon fisheries that we're planning now. But I will say, so that's important. I appreciate it. I will say, I didn't follow all the sort of messages you sent there. It sounded like you said you sent someone data. I think you were referring to me. I'm thinking that must not have been recent. I don't remember receiving data from you recently. And so what I'm going to say, let's not have this long conversation here at the public meeting. But in terms of both steelhead regulations, salmon regulations, and specifically the twitching jig rule that you proposed, I'm really hoping, along with, other communications you suggested you're going to have, do that. But I'm really hoping you stay engaged here with this team, because what I'm doing is not saying that this fishery, this twitching jig rule is not an issue and that it's not needed. But I am saying this is a discussion we're having. You've probably seen it more than me and others on this call maybe, but we are aware of the problem. So I'm nodding my head that this is a problem. It's also a problem in other places, and it's one we really want you to be engaged on. So let's keep having this conversation, but I don't have the answer for you today on how to fix the bad behavior that we're witnessing in some of these rivers. So thanks for all the feedback. Let's stay in touch. Thanks, Steve.
One last comment, James. Hello?
Yep. Yeah. But let's, I see some other hands, so let's keep moving. But what do you got, Steve?
Okay.
Thanks.
Real quick, I'm going to send you that data that you mentioned again, so you have it, because it's important. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Yeah. I'll look for that email. I appreciate it.
Okay, and our next hand is from Lance. Lance, go ahead.
And there we go. I was looking at what you put up there, and I felt like the north end of the bay, we don't have a commercial fishery till after the 15th of, unless I'm reading this wrong, there's no commercial fishery in 2T or 2U until after the 15th. Actually the 16th, I think, is the first day we fished, is it not?
Yeah, that's correct. The first fishery in 2T and 2U, it's on your screen now, is that week of 38.
Okay, yeah, I thought maybe somebody was responding that there was going to be a commercial fishery there and wipe that out, but and also I'd like to point out once again that the state isn't saying that we need a fishery in August. I think it was the Fish Commission that said that, and simply that fishery was put there to try to evaluate what our Chinook run was going to look like. It was basically an update fishery, and I look at the numbers that we ran last year with that fishery in, and granted this year we're one less day than we were last year. Not by any fault of Willapa Bay, but looks like we ran 2,000 spawners, 2,000 fish spawned in the NEMA, 2,300 surplus in the NEMA hatchery, 2,200 pond mortalities, for a total of 6,500 fish to the hatchery itself. And then that's not including the fish that died in the river or the fish that were caught. And that was with a greater commercial fishery than what we have scheduled this year. So I don't see where the problem lies in it, I guess. But yeah, I think to take the update fishery out on the state is not really appropriate, I guess. That's all I have.
Thank you, Lance, and that was our last hand. So just to remind folks on the phone, *9, and we have a hand up from caller ending in 793. Go ahead.
Hello, this is Andy. So I understand we lost the one day for truly conservation, and that's fine. But moving forward, is that going to be detrimental to analyzing our fishery for hatchery Chinook in August? by missing the one day? Is that going to be a major setback, or is that just something we're going to flow with, I guess?
We're gonna take all the data that we can get and try to apply that to our in-season tools that we're working on for our Chinook. So I think it is what it is.
Yeah, and
Right.
maybe Jody,
Okay, no, that's all I got.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add, just in case there's callers that aren't familiar with sort of this tool we're talking about. So the commercial fishery in Willapa Bay, has the opportunity to provide some pretty important data in season. But for this to be a useful tool, we really need to start to generate this data set, and we've got a plan to do that over the next couple of years. So we did lose that August 14 to 20th week in 2N, 2M, and that would have been kind of that starting point. That's when we'd start to see the data demonstrate whether there's a lot of Chinook or fewer Chinook than we planned. But this is, when we're talking about, shaving impacts to Chinook, it was an expensive week to hold on to. And so, I wish I could explain how that conversation went really clearly here, but I'll just say, it's a math problem, right? It's like, would we rather cut multiple days later in the season or this one early day for the sake of this in-season tool? And the way the math works out is that August 21 to 27 week, that's when we were gripping onto really tight. We know that that's when the data set's going to start to become powerful. So I'd say right now, I think we're still in a really good place for this in-season update tool as we start to build it. But we're going to know here in coming years if that first week is really important. So kind of circular there. I didn't explain it really clearly, but I think we're going to be fine if we miss that first week. But we're just going to know in the future. That's when we'll really know in a year or two.
And it looks like we have another hand up from a caller ending in 445. You can go ahead.
Yeah, this is Steve Gackey again. Hey, another caller mentioned this, and it was mentioned last week, and it has to do with the fact of doing these Zoom meetings. Last meeting I asked for some information about a list of the attendees, and what we ended up finding out, you, staff, and myself, is the agency felt that needed to be a public records request, and it was done very timely. I got what I wanted, but really what I want is to see somebody's eyes. I want to look at their face. And, this format works great because of COVID. It allowed us to have meetings, but, and it's great for the agency, I suspect, because it's probably less cost. But as far as relationships and being able to maybe have a dialogue with somebody, and where maybe you just need to really see the whites of their eyes and them see yours, I really would like to see us get back to a meeting setting and get away from this Zoom thing. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. And our next hand is from Lance. Lance, go ahead.
Sorry, it takes me a while to think of my thoughts. So as I get older, I don't want to see Steve's whites of his eyes. I hope he's not offended, but I had a question about the rec, and this is not a, how do I term this? This is not an attack or anything like that. I just wanted to understand, when I look at the rec, and we're going to open the Palix and the North Nema or whatever, or South Nema and Middle Nema, I think it was, to a 2-fish bag. I think it was no natural fish taken. What is our what is our theory on that, where we have no hatchery influence? And I'm not saying we shouldn't, I'm just asking, how do we look at areas like that, and from your standpoint, and say, this is a good idea or this is a bad idea, I guess, is what I'm wondering. I was a little bit puzzled by it, and it probably not a big deal, but I was just wondering if you could answer that.
Thanks for your question, Lance. There's been some suggestions of, throughout this whole process of opening and closing. You're familiar with the process. And ultimately, taking all of those suggestions and mixing it into this proposal that we have here, it's the best way that we see to provide opportunity for every sector on the water, maximizing opportunity on the water, and also giving us our greatest certainty that a high degree of certainty that we're going to meet our wild coho escapement. So kind of lumping all of those things into this package is kind of what came out of all of those suggestions from folks such as yourself.
Well, I guess that's one of my ending questions of it is, are you, for the sake of simplicity, not allowing us to keep one wild coho there? I guess that was my thought in my head, was why wouldn't we be able to keep one there? I mean, maybe there's a low abundance of coho in those rivers or something you're trying to, I don't know. I just kind of felt like if we're going to open it and let fishers go in and catch fish, it would kind of like being, say, hey, we're going to have a commercial opener, but you can't keep anything. It's an opportunity for me to lay my net out and I can box everything and let it go, but I don't know, maybe you attract people to do that. So I don't know. I was wondering if there was enough fish to allow for one to be kept, or if that was too confusing. Anyways, okay.
Yeah, Lance, if you're asking if there's folks that, want to take part in a fishery where there is an opportunity to catch a stray hatchery fish, but have a low impact on wild fish through mark selective fisheries, that is a proposal we hear. It's also worth considering, I know you're really familiar with this, is just our track record in meeting our escapement goal in Willapa Bay on natural coho. So we have some work to do to put some fish on the spawning grounds and meet those escapement goals. And so we've got a forecast here that allows some harvest, but it also allows, in places where there's not hatchery fish, it allows us to put people on the water and go fishing, targeting salmon, and in some cases releasing wild coho. So that's what we're targeting there.
Okay, good to see your eyes. Thank you.
And it looks like that was the last hand.
Thank you, Leah. Kim, if we could move to the last slide here, please. So I just want to remind everybody, you can still submit North of Falcon related comments electronically, and here is the link in order to do that. If you haven't joined our Willapa Bay distribution list or our Grace Harbor distribution list, please email the addresses you see on your screen, and we'll sign you up. We're really happy everybody joined us tonight and really appreciate all the good comments and the good input. And we'll look forward to seeing you out on the water. Have a nice evening.